There was recently a social worker in JeffCo schools who's known to be the most trusted employee there could be. And that's another topic we could talk about, is how they use the term trusted adult to replace the parent. This was JeffCo's top trusted adult.
Is that like a title? Hi, I'm a trusted adult?
Absolutely, actually.
You're kidding me.
They self-declare themselves and put signage outside of their doors to say, I am a trusted adult. We have been fighting that term heavily, especially in light of all of the sexual abuse and misconduct cases. But this social worker was arrested because of she assaulted a young 14-year-old boy who she started on her caseload when he was 12 in her office at school, in a secret location near his home, and in her car on school grounds. A very egregious case.
And this is a sexual assault?
Sexual assault, a sexual relationship.
What in the world is going on in Jefferson County schools? Is there a sexual predator on the loose? We're going to find out. But first, subscribe and like this channel. Click that little bell icon for notifications and find the Devil's Advocate podcast on your favorite listening app. Lindsay Datko, you run JeffCo Kids First. Is it fair to say that there are sexual predators in JeffCo schools?
Unfortunately, yes. We have uncovered 26 cases of sexual abuse, misconduct, hiring, firing, and reporting issues that definitely prove the fact that we have had predators and continue to have predatory behavior in our schools.
Let's start at the beginning. You've been doing this at JeffCo Kids First for, what, 5 years now? Something like that?
Coming up on 5 years in July.
What drew you to it?
As a teacher by profession, I was incredibly concerned by schools shutting down in July 2020 during the pandemic. And we grabbed 30 of our close friends and started forming a group that has now developed into an organization of nearly 8,000 families, employees, and community members.
8,000 people in this citizens organization. That is massive. What's the common theme? Why are all these people, what are they concerned about?
Yeah, it's incredibly powerful, and I'm a strong believer in local focused advocacy where we can make actual change. And what we're unified around is the fact that parents are losing control in our schools in many regards. There is an element of deception in our school culture, and that has unified families of all perspectives. We focused on individual rights and the rights of each family's values to be preserved as they enter schools. And that is a very unifying factor, and that's how we continue to grow.
The story that got me was coming out of Columbine High School. Now, Columbine, of course, the site of this terrible mass shooting, but then to find out, and help me with this story, it sure seems to me like a teacher was grooming an underage student, a female teacher and a female student, and now those two are a couple. Things like this happen. The difference is, tell me what I've got right and wrong here, that school kept it a secret from the parents, and that school helped tell the government that this girl was actually emancipated or homeless. What really was the story?
Well, there were certainly red flags of a relationship between the two. And back when the student was 15, she was a TA for the teacher.
A teacher's assistant.
Or she was actually in the teacher's class and had the teacher. And at that point,
the teacher was a teacher's assistant.
I'm sorry. I believe she was just in the class and not her assistant. Later on, possibly. But at that point, there were conversations that the teacher had with other employees about how to declare a student homeless.
Why would a student want to be declared homeless if they're in a home? And this girl was in a home.
She was.
She was living with her mom.
She was living with parents and 3 other siblings. And when she turned 17, still a minor, this paperwork was filled out and deceptively from the parents. Open records show that they avoided the parents' tax information to fill this out, and they avoided the parents' cell phone information.
Let me see if I got this right. So the girl wanted to officially be declared homeless For what purpose? So that she could move in with a teacher?
Well, I think it's important to state that the girl likely did not know about this federal paperwork. And this paperwork, the school district will tell you, was for FAFSA purposes, for which the girl did not qualify.
And for people who don't know that, FAFSA is how uh, graduating high school students get financial aid for when they go to school. I forget what the acronym is for, but it's every high school kid knows what FAFSA is. And you got to, and if she's homeless, that would help her on FAFSA. Is that the way that works?
That's correct. Yes, the paperwork would help her with this federal aid.
So the school district or the administrators at Columbine High School, it's like, we're going to help this girl who is not homeless, this girl who is living with her parents and her siblings like every other kid should be. We're going to help lie and tell the federal government she's homeless. All right, that's bad. What's unforgivable is they didn't talk to the parents about this. Do I have that right?
You have that exactly right. The parents did not know about this paperwork until they ironically found it under her bed while cleaning her room.
Well, thank God teenagers never clean, otherwise we would never find this out. And what they found was evidence that she was in a romantic sexual relationship with her teacher. And what got me in this story was when the mom went to the principal, went to the administrators, the response was, well, this teacher is very good in helping students work through their sexuality or something to that effect. What was the term?
Yes, the words were that this teacher, who was the GSA sponsor, is passionate about helping kids navigate their sexuality.
Navigate their sexuality. GSA stands for?
Gender and Sexual Alliance Club.
Oh, good God. So this is the woman who's having an affair with a underage girl, and the response is not, oh my God, we're going to have an investigation. Oh my God, we're going to fire her. We're going to have charges against her. The response from the officials, the people you tell, was, oh, well, this woman helps kids like yours navigate their sexuality. Now, mind you, there were a lot of high school teachers I would have loved to have helped me navigate my sexuality, but none of them did back then, or at least it seemed that way. And if it did happen, it would be a front page story, and it would be against the law, and somebody would go to jail. So who's in jail?
Nobody. And there is currently a criminal investigation due to the fact that we have pushed this out into the public. And while there has been accountability only in the regard to the teacher losing her license after the parents and I pushed the state education commissioner to do so, nobody else has been held accountable for facilitating this federal paperwork, which is a federal funding program called McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act.
It's still so wild for me to get this. I understand a teacher grooming a child. It's unfortunate, it happens. I do not understand how, when parents bring it forward, there's an excuse and not action. And even further, I don't get how that administration can help a student try to basically get emancipated from her loving family so she can live with a teacher.
Well, and a couple of new discoveries through open records is that 5 months later, after all of the evidence of grooming came forward, 25,000 texts and hours of
25,000
25,000 texts, hours of phone calls, and a note showing that there had been kissing. 5 months later, multiple mandated reporters were aware. And the Title IX coordinator, as well as the principal, discussed the teacher's first day back in the classroom. And that is an especially disturbing element, knowing that they were discussing that possibility.
What people might not know, you use the term mandated reporting. A mandated reporter is someone who, if they see something that looks like child abuse or something that looks like an illegal exploitation of a minor, they are mandated, that's the word mandate, mandated to report it, and which is how we know if a kid is being abused at home. if they come in and there are bruises that aren't answered, and it's a way to help it. You're telling me that people outside of this relationship between the student and the teacher, other teachers knew about this, and they have an ethical and legal responsibility to, again, mandate, the word mandate, to report this. They didn't?
Correct. Two aspects of that. One, if it was so dire in the student's home and it was so serious that they needed to declare her homeless, they didn't report then. And number two, they were planning on having this teacher back after all of this evidence. And no, there was no report made. In fact, the chief of legal for JeffCo Schools was not made aware of this until the parents finally went to her and presented the evidence and the paperwork. And that's when an investigation started 5 months later.
I understand. Schools have a role in teaching sex ed. I get that. I'm thrilled that schools have gay and lesbian clubs to make coming out easier for kids. When I was a kid, you couldn't do that. You had to stay in the closet a lot longer. That must have been so tough. But there is almost this acceptance of sexual grooming that goes on. I put it right up there with the transgendered indoctrination that goes on, right down to the gender-bred man that kids get in first or second grade. And it makes me wonder, is this all just a way to mess with our kids' heads? I don't see this girl as anything but a victim. Even though they're now together living out of state, this is a minor who was preyed upon in a public school where we put our kids to be safe. The number one rule there is safety, and they're not safe. And we as parents don't know because they're not mandating the reporting. It doesn't happen. And simple communication to the parents. It's as if parents don't count in Jefferson County.
That is exactly right. And we have spent 2 years focusing on policy, particularly the transgender equal opportunity policy, where there were 4 elements of pure parental deception. And we did convince them to remove those elements. But unfortunately, the deceptive culture has remained in Jefferson County schools.
4 examples of deception. What do you mean?
In those policies, they would allow the student to choose whether or not the parent was aware of them transitioning. They would leave parents out of meetings. It was just a policy that basically gave all power to employees in a child's very sensitive circumstances of beginning their transitioning process and absolutely removing the parent.
Let me go off the deep end for just a second. In totalitarian regimes, one of the most important methods is to get control of the kids, whether it's the Hitler Youth or what Mao did to get kids to squeal on their parents, and to make sure that parents are the enemy and that it's your job not to tell them what's going on, because your parent could be an enemy of the state and you will be rewarded. Granted, that's not what's going on here, but it sure has echoes of that.
It sure does. And I recently had a history teacher in JeffCo Schools who supports us reach out and say that same thing.
Really?
And he said, what we are seeing is history playing over again. You get control of the children. And
it's the same old tune, which is indoctrinating our kids if you're not telling the parents. All right. Lindsay, I'm sure you're a nice lady, but this was an isolated incident. It happens in one school, and guys like me go crazy over it because it's just so wrong. But bad things happen, and thanks to the press and active parents like you, we found out about it. We're going to rid ourselves of it. Everything is going to be fine. It's wrong for you to extrapolate from this one bad teacher who happened to be in a group of bad administrators and teachers who didn't do their obligation for mandating. But that's an oddity. It's a rarity.
Well, let me tell you some shocking data, and I won't go too far into it. But when you compare Denver Public Schools and JeffCo Schools, Denver Public Schools has 20,000 more students and double the free and reduced lunch rate. So they have 62% of children who qualify for free and reduced lunch versus JeffCo Schools. And JeffCo Schools has almost 2.5 times the rate of unaccompanied youth declarations through the federal McKinney-Vento program. And that is a massive red flag for a district that is known to be wealthy and not have as many minority students.
Tell me about this act. What exactly is the act? And then give me that statistic one more time.
Absolutely. The McKinney-Vento Unaccompanied Youth Homeless Assistance Act is a program meant to help children who are actually homeless, who lack a fixed and stable nighttime residence. And there is a verification process that goes into that. That includes verifying with the parents. And what we have found is that when you compare Denver Public Schools to JeffCo schools, Denver Public Schools has 20,000 more students and double the free and reduced lunch rate.
So there are so many more people at the school, so many more poor kids at that school as measured by the reduced lunch.
Exactly. And the data on Colorado Department of Education shows consistently over the last couple of years that JeffCo declares kids unaccompanied through this federal funding program, McKinney-Vento, at more than 2 times the rate than Denver Public Schools, which is a glaring red flag that we are declaring kids unaccompanied from their families. And we do have other examples that show a wielding of power that we find to be chilling, that leaves out the parents and leaves out mandated reporting.
All right. Is it possible that legitimately Jefferson County just has double the amount of homeless kids as Denver? Because as you know, JeffCo is a hotbed for homelessness compared to Denver. That's laughable.
Right.
What's behind that? What is the incentive of declaring kids homeless if they're not homeless? That's the part I'm not clear on.
Well, I will tell you that we have discovered training slides from the facilitators of this program. And a couple of those training slides outline the fact that transgender students are 9 times more likely to be homeless. And in JeffCo schools, we do know that gender ideology is a major factor and it runs rampant. And that does put alarm bells off for us.
All right, I'm still not adding it all up. So you've got, I understand the gender ideology stuff. How does that connect with homeless? Is there a reward for the schools if they declare people homeless? And is the gender ideology a way to promote that, or is it the other way around?
Well, one, yes, there is federal assistance, and JeffCo Schools has received about $400,000 since 2022 for that program. And 2, we know of another story of a student who has ended up in a LGBTQ shelter in Boulder, who is a JeffCo student. And that student did receive paperwork through JeffCo Schools, and we are continuing to uncover that. I also have had conversations with district leaders where they very much focus on the fact that LGBTQ students are often homeless. And so we are trying to piece this puzzle together.
Yeah, I'm having such a hard time trying to figure what this really means. I get a school district wants as much in federal dollars. I even get there's an incentive to falsify documents to get this stuff in. You said this is a kid at an LBGT shelter. What the hell is that? What is that shelter compared to any other shelter? What? I'm just confused by that. Yeah. Is like, no, a regular shelter would not work for this person. Why?
That's a very good question, and it's a shelter we did look at. They do serve that particular population in Boulder, and that is a JeffCo student who has been staying at that shelter. I'm not sure currently of where that student is, and we continue to look into that as far as what the paperwork and the McKinney-Vento aspect was.
So I could draw a conclusion, maybe a false one, that this push on gender ideology is so strong that to help kids transition, we're going to welcome you to transition, and we're going to get you away from those nasty parents who might think otherwise. So if you are emancipated, if you are a runaway, if you're homeless, you get to go to a shelter, or you get something else, you get more support, and most importantly, you don't have to tell your parents. And going back to the maltreatment, this is all about indoctrinating our kids and not telling the parents. We have a state law that says kids can transition and not tell their parents, and parents don't know. My kid cannot take a Tums at school without me signing a permission slip, but they can transition without my knowledge? That's crazy.
Absolutely. That's the best word to use. I agree.
And if this is the scheme, you're telling me that it's happening in Jefferson County at twice the rate as it is in DPS, even though DPS has 20,000 more kids.
Sure. And clearly there are legitimate cases of needing this, or of utilizing this Homeless Assistance Act. But we do really wonder and worry about that slide that JeffCo uses in their training to show that transgender youth are 9 times more likely.
Because they could make it happen.
That's correct.
And so they have an incentive in both ways. All right, getting back. So I say this was just a one-up thing. Tell me some other stories that you're finding, because you've been doing open records requests. You've been finding things. Just give me a taste.
Yes, and have countless stories. I'll pick some of the most egregious. For example, there was recently a social worker in JeffCo schools who's known to be the most trusted employee there could be. And that's another topic we could talk about, is how they use the term trusted adult to replace the parent. This was JeffCo's top trusted adult.
Is that like a title? Hi, I'm a trusted adult?
Absolutely, actually.
You're kidding me.
They self-declare themselves and put signage outside of their doors to say, I am a trusted adult.
And what does that mean, trusted adult? If I'm a teenager and I see a sign that says I'm a trusted adult, what is that code for?
Basically that you can go and talk to them about anything.
And they won't tell your parents.
Exactly.
Hi, I'm a mass murderer. You won't tell my parents. Hi, I've been committing crimes. Hi, I'm suicidal. Hi, I'm this and that. And you won't tell my parents.
Exactly. And so we have been fighting that term heavily, especially in light of all of the sexual abuse and misconduct cases. But this social worker was arrested because of she assaulted a young 14-year-old boy who she started on her caseload when he was 12 in her office at school, in a secret location near his home, and in her car on school grounds. A very egregious case. And
this is a sexual assault?
Sexual assault, a sexual relationship.
A trusted adult
Yes, sir.
is a pedophile assaulting a child, and the parents don't know.
And the parents don't know until one morning they were on his social media and checking on his messages, and undeniable evidence came flooding into their home. And they called me, and after calling the police.
What kind of undeniable evidence?
Photos that showed, and messages showing their secret location and sexual photos. And so the evidence in that case is undeniable. But let me tell you, one thing we discovered as well, because of our network, was that there was a settlement paid to a family because of this same employee's professional incompetence in the same time period. And this employee exhibited, again, professional incompetence, and they continued to employ her. And that is a pattern we've been seeing, is that there's past egregious behavior where they do not err on the side of child safety, they err on the side of their own reputation and maintaining the employee's employment. And in this case, it led to another opportunity for her to strike on another family in a different way. The first case was not sexual, but it was very egregious against this family.
And this has only come out because of your organization's work doing open records.
Correct.
Which is why Colorado's open records law is so crucial, because you cannot trust government, and schools are governments, and the only way you can do that is with this type of accountability. This is terrifying, Lindsay. I mean, absolutely terrifying.
It is terrifying, and we work around the clock on this. We're a volunteer organization, have highly skilled professionals on my team. Let me tell you one more that might shock you. In the news, there was a family liaison who had immigrant children in his office.
What is a family liaison?
They work with families. So this was a Spanish-speaking family liaison, and he would service the families and help the families.
Help them navigate the bureaucracy of the education system? Would that
correct.
be the way?
That would be a correct interpretation. And these young immigrant children, he said he was going to give physical exams to. So I find them to be especially vulnerable children. He molested them in his office. This is a big news story. But here's what my organization uncovered through open records. There was an arrest warrant, a live, active arrest warrant on this employee when they hired him. And that was overlooked and missed. Again, would have prevented this incident.
What the flying hell? When you hire someone in a school district, they go through background checks because they are dealing with very vulnerable people. And how in the world did they hire a guy who had an arrest warrant? That is not just incompetence, that is...
Inexcusable.
What, like the other stuff you told me wasn't inexcusable?
Exactly.
This is outrageous. Now, I've got a son who has Down syndrome, and he's remarkably vulnerable. And he's out in this world where we trust the education system for most of his life. This is where he has to be safe. And even before teaching kids how to read and write, schools have a responsibility to keep your kids safe. Why? Because you have no choice but to surrender your children to them by law. And therefore, the least the government can do is keep them safe. And they failed at this. Now, you've just told me 3 different stories, each one more disturbing than the next. At least a teenage girl, you think, well, maybe she's a little older. But when you're talking about a 11-year-old Spanish-speaking kid, that is terrifying. This is predatory behavior. It goes beyond just trans indoctrination. This is the kind of stuff. This is Jeffrey. This is national stuff. This is just awful. Give me one more. Tell me, is there another one?
It's hard to choose. Let me just slip in that rock bottom has been our chief of schools, who's been in the news, who had a part in all of these investigations. And we found he was put under investigation for possession of child sexual assault material, which is child pornography. And
rock bottom? Is this the guy's name?
I would say that was us hitting rock bottom.
I got it.
His name, it could have been, I guess. His name is Dave Weiss, and he unalived himself soon after going under investigation. But here's...
Wait. Is that some pleasant way of saying he shot himself to death?
He committed suicide, yes.
Because?
He left the state over the holidays.
Because they were investigating him for child pornography.
Yes.
Now, I can't say whether he's guilty or not, but shooting yourself in the head would lead me to believe perhaps you are.
That is...
And what was his position?
He was the chief of schools. He was the go-to, the boss of every principal and every principal's boss. He was right underneath the superintendent and had significant influence on outcomes in our schools and investigations, including investigations of other sexual misconduct and assault. And we discovered through open records again that just 2 days before he was fired, he was leading the sexual misconduct trainings within our school district.
Let me see if I can understand this. The guy in charge of enforcing this, training people on how to spot sexual predatory behavior, was himself a predator.
Correct.
What does Jefferson County School District say to all this? When they look at you and they look at the parents, what is the response?
Well, they are because of the chief of schools, especially, they have been holding summits and every bureaucratic method you could imagine to what I say is pacifying the community. And they have not been as responsive to me in my discoveries as I would like.
When you say discoveries, you're talking about open records requests.
Correct. And we uncovered this weekend in the news 26 of these cases and issues surrounding hiring, firing, and reporting. And their response to the media was, we'd love nothing more than JeffCo Kids First presenting all this evidence. And my response to them is, you gave me the evidence, because I have been conducting open records now for years and even paying for them. And so for that to be their response, rather than we're horrified, when can we meet with you, does not make us feel any more confident.
You said you had to pay for these. How much have you put out of your own money, or how much has been spent on open records?
Over our time, a few $1,000s, and lately they have been charging us more.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
All right, so parents who care have to pay thousands of dollars to find out what the hell is going on inside this school, because it seems systematic. This predatory behavior seems absolutely systematic.
It does. And our patterns prove that, and really can't be denied. My team, we are rock solid, rock bottom, rock solid. That could be the title of this, right? On our facts. We lead with facts. We only present facts. And that is how we have moved the needle. But yes, systematic would be the nail on the head.
Has the school board said anything or done anything?
That is another question in of itself, and the answer is no. What we're told is that when they have inquired about our cases, they are told they cannot be told because they are personnel issues. And so we see a real grab of power.
When I call bullshit to that.
Absolutely.
It is a wonderful way for people to hide behind the wall, saying, oh, it's a personnel issue. So you're telling me if one of your teachers went on a shooting spree, we wouldn't be able to talk about that because it's a personnel issue. You've got children sexually assaulted by your employees, and you're going to hide behind this as a personnel issue? And keep in mind, this is the same district that the county just recently de-bruised. That is, they kept extra money, and school districts, thanks to the ridiculous change in property tax laws and assessments, is rolling in money. And what are they doing with this money? They're sexually assaulting our kids. We've been doing this a long time. We've been critics of government-run schools for a long time. This is unheard of.
Yes, absolutely. There is something extra sinister going on in JeffCo schools that has to be addressed in a way that isn't just a summit that you would see from a bureaucratic organization.
So the very first thing has got to be transparency.
Yes.
You're telling me these things. I haven't seen all the evidence. I've seen what's been in the news. I've heard what you've had. But I think it needs to be laid out. If there are 25,000 texts between a teacher and a student, somebody needs to explain why those parents didn't know about this relationship if people who are mandatory reporters knew about it. Obviously, this is broken, and is it too much to say that if these allegations are true, people should go to jail?
I would absolutely. I believe that somebody needs to have, and I don't know what the maximum punishment would be, but there has to be accountability, because if not, it's going to happen again. And there has to be a criminal investigation that ends up with somebody being held accountable.
If you could boil it down and say, here's what made this culture happen, this culture inside the administration, to make it so easy to cover up sex crimes, to cover up indoctrination, to keep parents out of decisions with their kids, where would you put it? Where would you say, you know what, the change started there?
That is something I contemplate a lot. And what I would say is that our policies have, again, instilled a culture that is ripe for predatory behavior, including the term trusted adult, including the transgender equal opportunity policy that instilled a culture of parental secrecy. And when you have this permissive culture and hypersexualization of our children, then you are going to be seeing predators slip right in, and that's exactly what we've been seeing.
It almost sounds like it's a calling card for predators to go, we are going to make trans identity one of our signature things. We're going to have a system where parents will not be told things. If you are a child predator, your ears pop up when you go, what? There'll be a system where parents are not being told things?
Correct.
And it makes me wonder if that adds to the incredible increase in this.
There is no question in my mind. And because I have seen families absolutely divided, destroyed because of those policies, it's very clear. And add to that the hiring, firing, reporting patterns that we've discovered. And then you have the behavior without any accountability, without putting a stop to it when it's discovered. And we instead have a culture that's very unsafe.
What would you say to those people who look at this and go, listen, my kid is trans. My kid is going through something, and I support what my kid is going through. And what JeffCo is doing is making sure that there is a system where he is safe, where he is welcome, where he is understood.
Sure.
And he needs to be able to talk to trusted people outside the family. And I am glad that JeffCo has these things. And therefore, you're just going to make it so much harder for the kids who really do need this type of help.
Well, I mentioned JeffCo Kids First. We do differ from other modes of advocacy in the fact that we don't push against, for instance, a gender and sexuality club. What we push against is the parental deception. And we have yet to find anybody say to us, I want to be deceived. And so that is what we zero in on, is the deception. And that is why we have 500 people waiting to join our organization and 8,000 fighting alongside us every single day.
When you say waiting to join, do they have to go through an initiation or background check? What do you mean they're waiting to join?
We function largely through a Facebook group. It's been a great mode of transparency for us. And so in our queue, we just have 500 people, especially over this past couple of news cycles, waiting to join. And we welcome everyone who clearly has good intent or is just even curious. But the point is, we are continuing to gather people into our group to fight this issue, which is parental deception.
You get everything you want. What does that look like? You could wave the magic wand and change policy, change whatever. You know, if you could have it tomorrow, what is it you'd have?
If I could have it tomorrow, every classroom would first and foremost respect parents, and many do. Every classroom would present issues that are neutral, that present all sides of an issue in a balanced manner. Every classroom would report when they see neglect or abuse appropriately, rather than wielding power and taking it upon themselves. And that's what it would look like to me.
Lindsay, that's the way it is. Let me tell you, you talk to anyone in the education establishment, parents are included. Safety is first. Transparency is crucial. And that it is a cooperative arrangement with parents and the school districts. You have everything you want. It's right there in law.
That would be ideal. And I think that's the importance of our organization, is that when people have that perspective, you give it a few weeks of watching what we uncover, and we suddenly receive a message, wow, you were right. I can't believe it. We've got to change this.
How about this for a change in policy? Something that makes very clear. When kids go to school, they are not property of the school. They are not your kids. They are the parents' kids. Now, I understand there are broken homes, and I understand there are extenuating circumstances, and those things need to be adjudicated properly because there's a guardian that should be appointed or selected, but that you can't have our kids. And my mind just cannot keep stopping from thinking about Mao and thinking about Hitler and what happened and what happens in Stalin, and that when you come here, it is a different situation than at home. Your parents' authority ends when you walk through that door, and our authority and our values will be transmuted to you. You know, when my daughter was just a little first grader, they would get together and sing songs like
That's my grade,
reduce,
yep.
recycle, reuse, and sing, you know, all the environmental songs. Like, just teach them to read.
Yes.
Teach them
Yes.
to read. And now, and then in second grade, it was the genderbread man to say that there are all these different genders. And then third grade on, every class, well, what are your preferred pronouns? Creating an expectation that, you know, it's normal to be a they, them. It's normal to be something else instead of teaching them to read. And now, what are your pronouns? We won't tell your parents. What we're doing here, that has nothing to do with education. That has everything to do with indoctrination. This is Maoist, Stalinist bullshit.
That's exactly right. And being a teacher myself, I know the power of a classroom and the power of a teacher on a child's mind. And when that power is abused, we are in trouble as a nation.
Play this one out for me. What happens in the next half year to a year? What changes?
Well, first and foremost, we have to get a hold of this predatory behavior in our schools, because what we'd like to be focusing on is the fact that our children aren't reading. And as a first grade teacher, I know how capable 99% of our children are in accomplishing reading goals. And we can't focus on that because they're not safe. And so we've got to get a hold of these issues regarding predatory behavior, as well as the other issues of deception.
People want to get involved. They want to learn more. Where do they go?
A lot of action happens on our Facebook page called JeffCo Kids First. You can also see our website, www.jeffcokidsfirst.com. We also do a lot of outreach efforts and scholarships where you might enjoy getting involved in.
You say scholarships. Are you giving out money? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we give scholarships.
To whom, for what?
To our graduating seniors. And they just for them to seek any form of higher education, not just a university education. So last couple of years, we've given them to kids going to mechanical, auto mechanic school.
How do you choose who gets a scholarship?
We have a selection committee, and they get together and have some criteria.
Where do you get the money for the scholarships? Are you that wealthy? I mean, you're wearing some nice jewelry, so I'm thinking.
That's right. No, we're a 501c3, and our individual members do help us with that.
Remarkable. All right, so JeffCo Kids First. Spelled or?
FIRST,
all right.
Yes.
Facebook and .com.
Yes.
Do you want people to bring forward more of these stories? Or are you overwhelmed?
No, we want as many as we can get so that we can continue to uncover the pattern.
Lindsay, this has been the opposite of delightful, but really, really informative.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Until
I
next
appreciate
week,
it.
think freedom.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.